Iwaha.
Yep.
Oh, that's the people I know and love. Y'all look better.
This is
Iwaha,
Dr. Wortham. I'm all teeth.
you look skinny.
I'm trying to not smile so much.
Miss Iwaha, can you add a slide real quick?
All right, Dr. Wortham, the link, I just sent the link to Bridget. This will go live in a few minutes.
Can Miss Iwaha add a slide very quickly? I just thought of something. Oh, well. Hey, Azar, look at my background.
Yes, that's presidential.
Look at Melissa.
Dr. Wortham, the link has been sent to Bridget, so it will go live soon in like in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Walter, it's still having issues with the same thing?
Walter better. I'm gonna put this on mute.
Yeah. Well, then you shouldn't be in here. Problem is, I have no way to position this.
Dr. Wortham, can you hear me?
The link is live now. You know, this is just like the board meeting.
I haven't started recording yet. I'll probably start at 7:30, Dr. Wortham.
And I don't see where it says present anymore. Oh, share screen. Why don't we just get all that ready now?
You can share if you like. You can click on it right there. So.
Why is it taking so long to load? Still loading. $7:26.
Okay, it's loaded now.
Bob, and the link is fine. I mean, live and it's working out.
Sorry, Azar, I'm gonna call you Walter, and I was on a mute. So yeah, your link is live. Bridget, just I've been in communication with the PR. So
Is Walter in?
yep, Walter is coming in soon.
Can't see that microphone.
Hi. Do you hear me?
I can't
Yes.
see the microphone. Why does it keep going there? The microphone.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank
Okay,
you.
that's
You
everybody.
have it now, Dr. Wortham. You have it.
And no, but it won't come down easily.
I hear you, Dr. Wortham.
We'll start in 1 minute.
Okay. I'm hearing background.
Call this meeting to order. Flag. Just one more time, I call this meeting to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I would like to call for a moment of silence for those individuals, those families that have lost their lives due to the coronavirus. A moment of silence. And now a presentation from Chestnut Ridge Middle School.
Always has easy green orange. It's our goal to see the shines. You're right. You said you might run the family. How? I don't think I have enough space. That's exactly what I mean. One thing you will discover when you get next to one another is everybody needs to know the elbow room. Elbow room. It's nice when you're kind of cozy, but not when you're tangled up some nosy up. Everybody needs some elbow, needs a little elbow room. That's how it was in the early days of USA. People have to come in to settle go. The East was the only place there was to go. The president was Thomas Jefferson. He made a deal with Napoleon. How would you like to sell a mile or two? Or 3 or 100 or 1,000? So in the 1800s, the movies and a territory was sold to us without a fuss and gave us lots of elbow room. Oh, elbow room, elbow room. Got to get us some elbow room. It's the best of us. In God we trust. There's a new land out there. Volunteer to go. Goodbye, good luck, wear your overcoat. They prepare for good times and for bad. And for bad. Hired Sacagawea as the guy. She led them all across the countryside to the coast and found the most elbow room they ever had. The way was opened up for those with bravery. There were many a fights to win land rights, but the West was meant to be. They called it Destiny. The crackers, dreamers, and the peddlers, the politicians and settlers, they got there by any way they could. Any way they could. The gold rush trampled down the wilderness railroad. Red countries left the West was opened up for good. Now we get from east to west. Goodbye, New York. Hello, LA. But it took those early folks to open up the way. Now we got a lot of room to keep growing. From these tiny seed desperately have got our elbow room. Elbow room. But if there's an ever proper time where marriage can look up together, I'm sure we'll find some elbow room. Oh, elbow room, elbow room. Got to get us some elbow room. It's the moon or bust. Thank God because there's a new land.
As we are proceeding with this meeting differently than we have in the past, I'm going to ask the board attorney to share with the public some of the governor's statements that have come down which is what permits us to hold this meeting via the Zoom venue.
Thank you, Mr. Grossman. Under the Governor's Executive Order 202.1, the Governor suspended the traditional public meeting provisions of the Open Meetings Law, which would normally have us convene this meeting in public as we typically have with the public present as well. By suspending that, the Governor has indicated that it's acceptable for public bodies such as the Board of Education to have a meeting such as this through this video means. We have made available the meeting to the public. Again, the executive order indicates that that's permissible. So we are holding this consistent with the executive order 202.1. And in addition, with respect to this is being recorded. The governor's order indicates that, and the meeting will also be transcribed. The order does not specify exactly when that needs to take place, but that will be done with all due diligence, again, consistent with the governor's order. So we'll be holding these meetings in this way until the executive order is either lifted and the COVID virus emergency is abated. But at this point, we don't know when that will be. The order did not have an end date on it as of yet. So we will continue in this mode until further notice.
Thank you. Mr. Gerhardt, do we need a resolution to proceed in this venue, or can we just proceed onward?
There's nothing specifically in the governor's order that requires that. However, the local rules of the Board of Education, as set forth in a couple different board policies, indicate how board meetings will be held. Now, obviously, the governor's order takes precedence over any local policy or rule, whether it's a county, a town, or a school district. That said, it might be prudent to adopt and approve an amendment to the board policies, at least during this period of time where we're holding meetings this way, so that there's not, so that there's consistency between the governor's order and our board policies, because our board policies ordinarily indicate the board will meet. It will meet at a specific time at 105 South Madison Avenue, and the public will be able to make public comment. And because of the governor's order, we can't do that. It would be prudent. I think Ms. Keevy has a resolution to read that will address that, just so that our local policies are consistent with the order.
Thank you. Ms. Keevy?
Yes. Motion for the board to adopt the following resolution. Whereas the COVID-19 emergency has caused substantial disruption in day-to-day lives and in the education of students of the district, and whereas Governor Cuomo has issued multiple executive orders, including Executive Order 202.1 to 202.10, suspending various laws and rules, including suspension of provisions of the Open Meetings Law under EO 202.1, and whereas board policies, including policy 1230, 2310, and 2350 set forth operations of the board and its meetings. Now, therefore, in light of the above, the board hereby resolves to suspend the provisions of board policies 2310 board meetings, 1230 public participation at Board of Education meetings, and policy 2350 board meeting procedures. To hold meetings in accordance with Executive Order 202.1 permitting video conferencing, which will be recorded and transcribed later in time, and to permit public comment via email, provided such comments are submitted to the board consistent with the directions or instructions set forth on the district's website. This suspension will remain in effect until Governor Cuomo determines that a state of emergency no longer exists in New York State due to COVID-19. We could get someone to move that and second that, please.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Who's made the motion, please?
Harry is making the motion.
Okay. And who is seconding?
I'll second.
You're muted, Effie.
I have Mr. Y. Weissmandl seconded.
Harry,
Yes.
Can we change the Governor Cuomo, add to Governor Cuomo or his designee in case he's not able to do something, God forbid?
Douglas? Is that required?
No, I mean, we can do it. I don't think it matters one or the other.
Okay, fine.
If we're ready to call the vote, I'll call by roll order. Mr. Berkowitz,
Aye.
Ms. Charles Pierre,
Aye.
Mr. Freilich,
Aye.
Mr. Grossman,
Aye.
Mr. Trieger,
Aye.
Mr. E. Weissmandel,
Aye.
and Mr. Y. Weissmandel.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
And
The
just for purpose, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The motion passes with 7 ayes.
And just for clarity, for purposes of this recording as well as for the record, we're taking a roll call of everybody here on each vote, not because it is necessarily required, but because for clarity of both the recording and the transcription, so it's clear who's voting and that there's an accurate vote. So just so there's nothing misleading, that's the reason we're doing the roll call vote. It's easier for the board clerk to hear everyone's vote, yes or no, accordingly.
Thank you.
Proceeding onward, public comment is going to work differently this evening. Ms. Keeving.
Yes. It was posted on our website. People need to email their comments by 6:30 on board meeting day. I received 2 comments. The first from Mr. Stephen White. He had 3 questions to give to the board. How many students are currently receiving and completing all their classwork online? How many are not receiving or completing any work due to a lack of computer hardware or internet access or other logistical issues? How many are receiving and completing only part of the work? And just a point of information, our policies have always said that the board does not respond to questions received during the public comment period, but they will take note of them and consider them at a later date. The second comment received was from Ms. Terry Mersell. Her comment was, will Mr. Grossman please suggest that we try 9 p.m. closing at the polls for the May 19th voting? And again, we don't respond directly to questions during public comment. And that concludes all the comments that I received.
Thank you. We don't have to announce the emergency exits. So moving on. Dr. Wortham.
Thank you, board, and good evening to our community. I would like to read our mission statement, protocol for all of our meetings. As a unified community, the East Ramapo Center is committed to educating the whole child by providing a healthy, safe, supportive, engaging, and challenging learning environment. Our vision statement, we will become proficient in all that we do. In our 5-point plan, we want our staff and students, especially now, to be healthy, safe, supported, engaged, challenged. This evening, it gives me good pleasure to introduce our newest monitor, our fiscal monitor, Mr. Bruce Singer, who's appointed by the New York State Education Department. He is our monitor and working with the district on fiscal matters. Mr. Singer, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are happy to have you, and we look forward to working with you. At this time, I would like to express to the board, to the community, where give a historical perspective on COVID-19 and actually how did this impact our district initially. On the evening of March 6th, approximately 9 o'clock in the evening, I was informed that there were 5 individuals who were exposed to COVID-19. I believe we were the first district, surely in Rockland County, to have this phone call. The phone call was made to me by Dr. Mary Jean Marco, our COO of BOCES, and she received the call from the Department of Health. Needless to say, there were more questions than answers at that time. We were told that the individual would be tested and we would receive more information following that. Households that are connected to a school in our district that were under quarantine due to exposure. There were 5 buildings where we had individuals that were exposed. And in the next day or 2, those 5 individuals who were tested, 3 were positive. We were directed by the Department of Health to close 3 buildings, and as a precautionary measure, due to 3 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in 3 buildings, we were directed to close 3 buildings for 2 weeks. What happens when you close 3 buildings for 2 weeks? What happens when you have 2,500 students, staff on quarantine? It impacts the entire district. It impacts the entire district because many of our teachers who were quarantined at the time would have been teaching in other buildings. We knew that we could not open our district unless we were whole. We knew that we couldn't open 11 other buildings. So at that time, as I said, there were more questions than answers. I am so grateful to recognize our head nurse, Miss Chris Healy, and again, our COO from BOCES, Dr. Mary Jean Marsico, who formed a team, and together with my cabinet, with the board, we strategized, what do we do to live up to our mission statement and our 5-point plan that we want staff and students who are healthy, safe, supported, engaged, and challenged. So for the first 2 days, we used snow days to close the entire district. When your district is going through this experience, the Department of Health and the State Education Department have agreed to give you 1 emergency closing day. So we were afforded that. In working with our interim commissioner, interim Commissioner Shannon Tahoe, we were able to close schools using 2 snow days and the emergency day. At this time, districts across the state of New York still had not started closing, but we were in a position to figure out how we could keep our entire district safe. I heard from the community, and I heard so many parents say, we cannot open 11 schools and still have 3 schools closed. That was key. So on the 4th day, we started using our emergency days, and that requires board action. We were able to poll the board and to ask about using the 3 emergency days that would be used in April to close 3 additional days. And we were successful in doing that. We continue to hear feedback from the community day by day by day. Why don't we just close for the week? Because we had to strategize and determine, how do we close school without losing $200,000 a day in funding? At this time, we were now at Tuesday, and our county executive, Ed Day, gave a mandate. He gave an executive order to close schools for 2 weeks, which also worked in concert with our governor with an executive order closing for 2 weeks. So now we were on par with what was happening in the state of New York. I want to again thank the board, thank my cabinet, the teachers, the principals, our custodians, our facility staff, our food service workers, everyone. I want to thank Mr. Tony Dinkins, who called and said, there's $700 that I can contribute to printing documents for our students. He didn't hesitate. We always say it takes a village to raise a child. We're experiencing the support from the village, from the community, and we thank you so very much. I want to thank Ms. Tammy Goss for her tremendous support in no matter what task we needed, no task was too big or too small. And the same with Ms. Sabrina Charles Pierre, the vice president of our board. Thank you, thank you. I want to thank the young people. I want to thank the 30 and 40 volunteers who supported us through this time. Thank you so very much. So the district closures varied across the state, but I would like to say that the East Ramapo Central School District, we worked together and we made it happen, and we didn't lose any of our federal funding. Then it went forward with community closures, and they varied as well. But our endeavor was to make sure that our staff and our students were healthy, safe, and supported. Our acronym REP, R-E-P-P, responsiveness. How responsive were we in stabilizing our environment? We were extremely responsive. We made sure that all of our students were safe, all of our staff members. We were able to educate individuals in our community, our staff, about COVID-19. We regularly posted information on our website and on our app. I hope community, you are not tired of our robocalls. One time it was at 11 o'clock at night. Another time it was 5:30 in the morning and 7 o'clock, because we had to close schools on that Saturday and Sunday. We didn't want our students or our staff members to come out for the Saturday Academy. So by any means necessary, we were responsive and we had to educate our community about COVID-19. And then preparation. What did we do to promote readiness to respond? The strategies that we put in place to prepare and to talk about next steps. And now prevention. Prevention. Avoiding effects or risks associated with COVID-19. We Want to make sure that we thank our district doctor, Dr. Satter, who wrote an article, and we posted that on our website as well, our fast facts. Even going forward, to thank Scott Salato and Bridget Clark, who helped us to keep abreast of the website and our app. And again, to Senator Carlucci for his support in launching the 180-day waiver. And then we know what happened with the governor's waiver. So we've had the support, Mr. Tony Earl, the legislator, we've had your support, and we thank you so very much. We're grateful for Ellen Jaffe and Assemblyman Zabrowski. Thank you for your support. And I shouldn't name names, because you know what happens when you name names, you forget someone. So whatever you did to support the East Ramapo Central School District, we are extremely, extremely grateful. We were responsive together. We put forth the education. We were prepared, and we went forth with preventative measures. So that brings us to mindset. We always say to our staff and our students that we have to have a growth mindset. That's the green side. We have to have a growth mindset, and we don't want to have a fixed mindset. Through this experience, we had to continue to speak in a positive mode, because when we do that, we know that we have the energy resting on the synergy that comes from the positive atmosphere. This was going first, being the first district to have been diagnosed. We had to stick together to come up with and to maintain and to focus on a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. Oh, what are we going to do? And because of that, we have continued to move forward. And to my knowledge, there have not been any other individuals who tested positive in our district. So I just want to share a bit of information about the governor's plan for focusing on several criteria during this time. The administrators, the superintendents in the Lower Hudson Council of School Superintendents conducted a survey. And I would just like to share this survey very briefly. Several questions. Are you attempting to track daily student attendance? And you can see that the blue section says yes, the orange means no, and the green means other. So where you see we've put a star, yes, our teachers will be moving forward, taking attendance. How are teachers marking individual assignments? Well, you can see that for the Lower Hudson districts, this survey says simply marking for completion. Another part of the survey, if you've made a decision about quarter semester grades, assuring that we're out that long, what is your answer? And you can see throughout the Lower Hudson that the districts are still brainstorming and talking about quarter and semester grades, even as of today. Number 5, choose the distance learning description that most closely fits your district's approach at the elementary levels. Well, you can see that most districts chose asynchronous. And when we think about asynchronous instruction allows student-centered teaching that facilitates sharing information with, let's say, with consideration to time and place. So instruction goes forward, but we consider time and place. What does that mean? It means that the teacher might pre-record a lesson or a video or an activity, and our students have an opportunity to learn at another time. It doesn't have to be that exact time. So as we go forward in our elementary grades in Lower Hudson, in our secondary grades in Lower Hudson, that the districts have opted for mostly asynchronous experiences. Choose a descriptor that is most accurate for elementary schools. Students are mostly determining how to schedule their days based on teacher assignments. Choose the descriptor that is most accurate for your secondary schools. And again, in secondary schools, according to the survey for Lower Hudson districts, students are mostly determining how to schedule their days based on teacher assignments. Are you requiring video conferencing, such as Zoom, FaceTime, Google Hangout at the elementary level? Notice the answer was no. What about secondary? And the secondary, the same. So what does it look like for the East Ramapo Central School District? What does our continuity plan look like? Well, the governor has focused on, and the state education department has focused on 3 priority areas: continuity of education, childcare, and child nutrition. Continuity of education, childcare, and child nutrition. Let's look at continuity of education. I'm going to ask those individuals from my cabinet to please unmute yourself, specifically Ms. Iwaha and Ms. Sabrina Charles-Pierre. We had to submit plans for each one of these broad categories. And we submitted plans in concert through our BOCES. So all of the districts in Rockland County submitted plans through our BOCES, and then we uploaded them to the governor's office and the state education department. Continuity of education. Ms. Iwaha and Ms. Sabrina Charles-Pierre, will you talk about the Chromebook distribution?
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Wortham and board members. In order to meet the prioritized objective of providing access to instructional resources, the district is currently providing Chromebook devices to those students and teachers who require technology based on need and individualized educational plans. That's their IEPs or their 504s. The district has assessed the need of our community through a school-based district-wide survey and the availability of hardware to begin equitable distribution to students and teachers based on the identified need. And to date, 3,478 families completed a technology survey that closed today. 1,500 families were contacted to sign out Chromebooks distributed on Sunday, March 22nd, and Tuesday, March 24th. In collaboration with our Transportation Department, Buildings and Grounds, Security, MIS, and our building principals, we will continue to contact our families this week through school and district alerts to inform them of scheduled pickup dates, times, and locations. The district has, and very much so, an outpouring of support from our community in the form of volunteers who have coordinated and distributed Chromebooks at school and district sites. And to speak more on these efforts on the ground, I'm going to turn it over to Vice President Sabrina Charles-Pierre.
Thank you, Ms. Oaha. Good evening, everyone. I just want to say that we had a very successful 2 days of giving out Chromebooks to our students. I'm very grateful for all the volunteers that came out last minute to help distribute the Chromebooks between Sunday and today. And I just hope that we can continue to work together as one to make sure that our students get everything that they need in this time of need.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Iwaha and Ms. Sabrina Charles-Pierre. And now I would like for Ms. Natisha McVeigh, Dr. West, Ms. Barrow, and Ms. Walker to prepare in that order to talk about our flexible learning plan. Our flexible learning plan, there are several names that people associate with this. We say flexible learning plan because we want to have both paper pencil as well as technological experiences for our young people. So Ms. McVeigh, flexible learning plan.
Good evening. As Dr. Wortham has stated, there has been a collaborative effort between the districts in Rockland County as well as our local BOCES when it comes to addressing the need to provide instructional continuity at this time that our schools are closed. As a district, all officers and educational staff that are responsible for educational health and well-being of our students have begun to provide home learning experiences through independent standard-based instruction. We will continue to provide these experiences in a teacher-directed, technology-supported manner that we have begun to term flexible home learning. So just to give a brief overview of the purpose of the flexible home learning process in the East Ramapo Central School District and elements of our plan. So we're working to make sure that we provide continuity of learning. We want to engage students through content, but we also too are making sure that there's challenging experiences in this independent practice that we plan to provide for our young people. We're providing resources that review, refresh, and reinforce the learning acquired in the classroom while students engage in home learning. The plan has been designed to outline how students will access instruction and materials, receive assessments, submit work, and get feedback from their teachers, as well as collaborate with teachers and students within their peer groups. It also guides and encourages parents to be actively involved in this learning process. So one of the things that we endeavor to continue to do is to make sure that the continuous learning process that we're terming flexible home learning remains true to what we've introduced to our students as well as our staff, as it speaks to the fundamentals of the learning experience here in East Ramapo. So we want to make sure that teachers continue to provide guidance and support our students in their learning experience by posting on a regular basis clear learning targets. So we want there to be active engagement with our students. We're looking to make sure that the activities that are developed are standard-based and aligned to the current scope and sequence to make sure that we do not have gaps in our instruction or learning. We're looking to offer daily feedback to our students. We want to make sure that there is regular communication with our parents if there are any questions that need to be asked of our parents and families in relation to guiding and supporting students through the continuum. We also want to make sure that there's constant understanding and communication through the use of technology platforms when appropriate. So we've begun to prepare our teaching staff through professional development. We've also to offer time for our teachers to have an opportunity to plan content grade level specific activities to guide our students through the remaining time that we're out. So we'll continue to update our plan to adhere to the evolving guidance that we're receiving from the Departments of Education, our Departments of Health, and local government officials. While we're considering the elements of our plan and continuing to update their plan as we receive new information or guidance, we are giving special consideration to our special education students, to our students who are English as new learners, as well as making sure that we continue to provide the necessary supports for our high school students who are being offered credit-bearing courses and looking to move into the post-secondary world. So with that being said, I'm going to turn this introduction to our flexible home learning experience to Ms. Walker so she could provide additional information related to special student services and what they will look like under the umbrella of flexible home learning.
Okay, good evening, Dr. Wortham. Good evening, board. This is definitely a time where we get to be innovative and in our support of our students. And the district continues to remain abreast of all state and federal government guidelines regarding instruction for our specialized population during this time. Current guidelines emphasize the need for all students to have access to any distant learning plans that are established. And then it also allows for virtual and online teletherapy and video conferencing where appropriate to support students' learning and their individualized learning plans. So the district's special education teachers and clinicians are working in accordance with these guidelines to ensure continuity of services in alignment with students' individualized instructional plans. And so far, our special education teachers are following up with all students on their assigned caseloads using coordinated technological tools that students are familiar with. They are continuing to collaborate with their teachers, with the general education teachers, to ensure equitable access to the flexible learning for their students. And then the flexible learning lessons that are being developed by the teachers are supporting students at a variety of levels. It is allowing for teachers are working creatively to ensure that lessons are actually specified and targeted towards the specific needs of students, even some of our more specialized populations. Our specialists, our occupational therapists, our physical therapists, our speech and language therapists are also continuing to meet with students and work with students using, again, the virtual platforms that are approved. And our psychologists and our counselors are also working to continue the focus on academic progress and social emotional well-beings of our students during this time. And we are also continuing, check-ins with the students. They are continuing to ensure check-ins with families. And we are continuing to make sure that even in this new normal, that we are ensuring that our students are, that they're supported, that they're healthy, that they're safe, that they're supported, and that they're challenged with the curriculum that's set forth. I think Ms. Barrow.
Hello. Good evening, Dr. Wortham and members of the board. For the bilingual ENL and world languages department, we are working to make sure that our students are developing their language in English, Spanish, and French. What we are doing is making sure that our lessons are standards-based and focused on listening, speaking, reading, and writing, all of the components that go into language learning. Our bilingual classes will continue to deliver instruction in Spanish for the content area classes, and then also while helping students acquire English through English language arts and English as a new language. World language classes are continuing with their studies based on their levels of language in Spanish and French. And they are also embedding information about the countries and the cultures that speak those targeted languages. Also, last year, we were very successful in having many students receive the seal of biliteracy at the high school level. And we would like to continue with helping the students achieve that goal of earning the seal of biliteracy. And luckily, we created a timeline in our handbook to help students stay focused on how to complete each part of their project, their final project. So the advisors are working with their group of students to make sure that they are meeting every part of that timeline so they will successfully complete their project and be able to earn the seal of biliteracy. Our teachers are fully engaged in providing these lessons. They are they're coming together in a group of their own and coming up with many different resources for our students, both online and offline. So I am very proud of them, and they're being very successful. So right now I'd like to pass it on to Dr. West, who will talk about secondary education.
Good evening, board members. Good evening, Dr. Wortham. I'm going to speak about the assessments and the guidance we've received from the state thus far. So in terms of the 3A assessments and the NYSA slot, at this time, New York State Ed Department has canceled or suspended the administration of the exam. They will reschedule them for a future date. Regents exams, we have not received any new guidance about the Regents exams in June. We should be hearing very shortly as to whether or not they will still be administered come June. We are still mindfully preparing students just in case they have to take the Regents exams. AP exams, for the first time in a number of years, the College Board has taken a survey, has decided to survey AP students, and 18,000 students responded and stated that they would like the AP exam to continue. So with that being said, the College Board is going to administer the exam. If students want to cancel taking the exam this year, the College Board is allowing them to do it free of charge. They are not going to take the exam in the traditional way, which is face-to-face. College Board is now working behind the scenes to come up with a platform in which the exams will be administered. The one thing they have shared is that the exam will only include topics that they know traditionally teachers should have covered by the early March, the beginning of March. And then as well as students will take a 45-minute free response questionnaire at home. It's online. College Board has assured us that they will provide updates no later than April 3rd. And we will continue to monitor College Board and disseminate the information to our students and our families as they become available. SAT exams. This year, the SAT exam, the March SAT exam, which was supposed to be postponed, has been canceled, and so has the May exam. The College Board is recommending that students who would like to take the June exam register for the June exam, as they are aware that the availability of seats will fill up rather quickly. They're recommending that if students need to take the subject test, and this is their second administration or their second time taking this exam, that they should perhaps wait until September or in the fall to retake the exam. In terms of ACT has announced that the April ACT exam will be canceled nationwide. They are going to issue refunds to students who have registered for that exam. And they also recommend that students apply or register for the June exam. Again, we are paying attention or monitoring closely the state ed department in terms of assessments and Regents exams and graduation, and any guidance that the state will provide on materials pertaining to the high school and closing out the school year.
Thank you so very much. Dr. West, as well as the CNI team, Ms. McVeigh, Ms. Barrow, and Ms. Walker. Thank you so very much. As I said before, there are three overarching areas that the governor, as well as Interim Commissioner Tahoe, have put forth. The first area was continuity of education. You just heard that. Now let's talk about child care. And I would ask Dr. Shanahan to please come forward at this time to bring us up to date on child care.
Thank you, Dr. Wortham, and good evening, board. Following Governor's Executive Order 202.4, our district has been developing a plan for childcare services for first responders and essential healthcare workers. To this end, we've partnered with Rockland BOCES and with Childcare Resources of Rockland. We've disseminated a survey to the community to gauge the need in our community for a service like this. And we, with the Child Care Centers Resources of Rockland, have started to collect those data. That survey went out today. And our goal is to have a 5-day-a-week childcare program for essential healthcare workers and first responders, their children, organized in small groups in one of our elementary schools. And as soon as we get additional guidance from the state, as well as the data on the need in our community for this service, we will be implementing that program in collaboration with Rockland BOCES and Child Care Resources of Rockland.
Thank you, Dr. Shanahan. And I know you worked very hard on this with Mary Skolnick. We have established teams circling around all of these initiatives. And the third initiative is child nutrition. We have a very robust child nutrition team. And speaking for us tonight is Mr. Douglas Schwegler, who is actually the Director of Transportation. Mr. Schwegler.
Good evening, Dr. Wortham and board. Since the emergency declaration was established, the mandate to feed all of our district students was placed before us, and Dr. Wortham convened the cabinet to formulate a plan to get the meals out to the students. That being said, since March 18th, which was last Wednesday, we began this program. Mr. Carton and myself have been on the ground in district every day at 7 a.m., overseeing the loading and dispatch of vehicles to select locations, 15 locations, where we can distribute the meals to all students who came and wanted the meals. The first week, there were 15 locations spread out throughout the district, which we felt were central to serve all the district's students. Beginning this week, we began utilizing 13 school building parking lots, as well as the Martin Luther King Multi-Use Center and the Spring Valley Police Department parking lot. It's gone exceptionally well. All students are being fed. We are constantly resupplying the locations with additional meals when needed. And each van is staffed with a driver, a district employee who's an aide, as well as a representative from Whitson's Food Servicing. So all the meals are being handed out, and especially on Friday, when we are supplying all the students with meals, not only for Friday, but for Saturday and Sunday as well. This will continue as long as need be. And I believe that it's going flawlessly. At this point, we will continue to look at the locations and if need be, to update locations. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Schwegler. On your team is Tom Carton, our head of security, as well as Mr. Patchy, our assistant superintendent for finance, and Mary Skolnick, as well as Melissa Barrow. We are so grateful for the structure that we have put in place to address all three of these areas: continuity of education, child care, and child nutrition. What is of utmost importance is our essential employees. I'm going to ask Mary Skolnick to come forward at this time to talk about that area that the governor and our Commissioner Tahoe have expressed to us the importance of our essential employees. Ms. Skolnick?
Thank you, Dr. Wortham. Good evening, Board of Education members. On March 16th, the governor issued an executive order regarding essential personnel. Essential personnel are those personnel essential to the response to the COVID-19 emergency. They are exempt from workforce restrictions. These are personnel needed for childcare, child nutrition, and continuity of education.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Skolnick. And once again, I want to reiterate and thank my colleagues throughout Rockland County, the fellow superintendents, Dr. Mary Jane Marcico, who keeps a pulse on all three of these overriding initiatives, and we are working in concert together.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
How does the flexible learning plan align with the Star Renaissance program, which we use to monitor student development? Is Star Renaissance being put on hold while this is taking place, or it'll take place in conjunction with it?
Well, it will take place in conjunction with it. I'm going to ask Ms. McVeigh to unmute and to come forward with additional information. But our flexible learning plan, of course, is based on data, and it's based on the most recent data for our Star Renaissance. Ms. McVeigh?
Yes, so flexible home learning allows for a variety of platforms to be utilized. And one of those platforms would be Renaissance Learning. So Renaissance Learning, the platform we use for our STAR assessments, actually offers a number of additional resources that are aligned with the data that we would generate from those assessments in order to meet the needs of our students. So it gives a more flexible way, if you would, of teachers being able to apply what it is they know about their class in an effort to continue education. So while we don't have the universal assessment cycles in place, we still are using that platform to help support our young people.
We could not go a day in space, in cyberspace, without the data from Star Renaissance. When we put that in place in January of 2016, it was the greatest investment, so that we put forth the effort to instruct our students. Now we do it strategically.
That was my concern. Thank you.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? Can you hear me?
And now I would like Mr. Patchey to come forward, and we'd like to bring the board and the community up to date with our 2020-2021 proposed budget.
Thank you, Dr. Wortham. Good evening, board members.
As we know, the 2020-2021 budget is based on our strategic plan. Everything that we do, all the decisions that are made in the district are based on our strategic plan. And in this way, we know our strategic plan was created with 300 individuals from the staff as well as community. And through that 5-year period, we can say that that was the framework for ensuring that we demonstrated growth. To date, our 12 K-8 schools are now in good standing. They've been in good standing for 2 years. January of this year, Ramapo High School, their graduation rate increased to 75%, and they have moved forward. We won't be happy until it's 100%, but we are grateful for the increase. So we can say that 13 of the 14 schools have risen to the ranks of being in good standing. Based on that data, based on the movement, the framework, our Regents exams, based on Mr. Grossman, our Star Renaissance exams, we build our budget so that our budget is a strategic budget, and we're going to give you an update at this time. So the tax levy, the total amount that a school district collects from property owners to balance its budget. The levy actually is determined after accounting for all other sources of income, including the state aid. There's a tax cap maximum. It does not, our tax cap does not exceed New York State's maximum allowance, maximum allowable cap. The statewide allowable tax levy increase is calculated by the state comptroller's office. So it's not calculated by the East Ramapo Central School District. Mr. Patching?
Thank you, Dr. Wortham. Good evening, board members. The coronavirus related events have brought certain disruption in our way or in our normal way of operating. However, they have created and added a sense of acute urgency and responsibility in forcing us to answer a question: how do we maintain the current level of education for our kids, the current level of operation and services, while being sensitive to the taxpayers, given the hardship that everyone, especially in the New York area, is experiencing right now. On that perspective, the next slide, Dr. Wortham, it should have been the first. On that perspective, we have worked constantly during these 2 weeks, and we have come with a proposed tax levy that stands at 1.81% increase from the previous year. The State Comptroller's Office has released the tax-based growth factor, which is stated on this slide. And it's a powerful factor that reflects the growing tax base in the area. Also, they have released the inflation factor, which is 1.81%. Now, after all the calculations, if we go to the next slide, Dr. Wharton, the previous, it was on the order. The order was, yep, one up, right here. So after all the calculations, the adjusted tax levy limit stands actually, let me see because I don't see the numbers directly, stand at $159,403,523. But on light of what Dr. Wharton said, and which I also went over, we are suggesting a proposed tax levy at $157,286,500. That means is an increase in absolute value dollars of $2,796,273, and that represents an increase in tax levy of 1.81%, which is exactly the inflation factor listed by the Office of State Control. Next slide. Next. Just to have an historical perspective, the inflation factor or the allowable levy growth factor for the last 5 years has oscillated from a low of 0.12% to a high of 2%. So this year, when it was released in January, this stood at 1.81%. And we're using exactly this number as our proposed levy increase for the year 2021. Next. So with this thing in mind, and we will elaborate a little bit more in detail later, our preliminary budget will show a increase of 3.14%. That is supported by a tax levy increase of 1.81%. Our revenues, again, as we have shared on the previous board meeting, there are two elements in here that we all know now that account for almost 95% of our revenue, is the real property taxes and the state aid. So altogether, with a miscellaneous amount of money that come from our services to our health services to or from foster care tuition that we receive, or from use of facilities. Next slide, everyone. From certain compensation from reimbursement from insurance and the workers' compensation, and also from Medicaid, which is on the next slide. Altogether, we will come to a total amount of revenues, as we know for now. Next slide, of $247,753,226. That our current budget stood, the revenue for the current budget stood at $241,185,222. So what we don't know in here yet, and what these numbers reflect, we have used the state aid numbers released by the governor Cuomo in January, adjusted for a certain increase in transportation aid that we expect to increase as we had incurred higher transportation expenses on the previous year. We will know more based on a latest question and answer that Dr. Wortham released to Cabinet today. We expect to know more by the end of the week, and hopefully by March 31st for a final number on the state aid. With that number, we will be able to finalize our budget in terms of the revenues. From previous experience, from previous history, although we are living a very different time, the legislator has been always positive in adding between $800,000 to $1 million to our foundation aid. We will wait to see if this is the case. Maybe the state also is waiting to see what the federal government will do with their package of aid. So it's a very complex situation, and hopefully we will learn shortly by early next week. Yep, that's exactly what I shared with you. So that's a graphical representation of all major sources of our revenues. Almost 64% of our revenue come from taxes, and that's why they are so important, as well as over 33% now comes from the state aid. Again, that's practically, that's what would make us going on. And if one of those components suffers, we do have problems. On the expense side, again, we just wanted to bring to, again, to recall that our preliminary budget will see an increase of 3.14% year to year, and a proposed tax, supported by a proposed tax levy of 1.81%. So what do we have in the expense side? Next slide. In a comparison year to year, we will see the general support. These are the components. As you see, first, let's see here the instruction. Our instruction allocation will go up by 1.27%. On the number that stands up in here is general support. There is a decrease. The decrease is simply reflecting a expectation that after discussing with the lawyers, with the district lawyers, there is an expectation that the legal fees will be at a lower level next year, and that's what practically reflects that negative 5.20% decrease in the expenses on general support. Employee benefits for a change this year are expected to be almost the same, actually lower. And that is mostly because we experienced, for the first time this year, we experienced a negative growth in health insurance expenses, when in fact, in the year before, we had budgeted for 7%. So we are starting from a very low number. So this is the first year that we were helped by the health insurance expenses. Moving on in the next year, we are still projecting a 5% increase, but in totality, all the benefits will come almost the same or negative 0.9%. The debt service increase reflects the fact that now we will have to pay the debt service, the principal and interest on the entire bonds, capital project bonds. As a matter of fact, this has been a very stressful period for us. We were successful finally. We had to cancel 3 times the sale of the bonds for the last 10 days from March 12th due to the situation in the market. And we expect to close on Monday, March 30th. Everything is signed. We have the good faith deposit. Everything has gone smoothly, but it was a very stressful because of the market. So in a nutshell, our debt service is projected to go this high for that purpose. So in totality, our expenses will grow up by 3.14%. Transportation, I'm going to say one more thing. On transportation, we plan for an increase reflects an increase in 1,000 students. So we are projecting between all students, public and non-public, an increase of 1,000 for next year. And that obviously is a significant number that shows in terms of the percentage increase year to year. We have to recall that transportation as it is now, it is fundable, reimbursable at a rate of 76% for our district from the state. So where does, in terms of how much each of the components represent for our district, as you can see, more than half of our resources go to instruction. That's without the benefits. And then, yes, the benefits, like in every district, consume more than 20% of our expenses. However, and the transportation is close to 16%, but we have to recall that we are now the second largest district in terms of the number of students transporting, with about probably we expect to be at 37,000 next year. So that increase is simply a increase in terms of the enrollment. It's enrollment driven, and it's a mandate that we will fulfill. Next. Another graphical representation with, again, as we discussed with the instruction at almost 52%, the numbers are rounded here, and benefits still representing a large share of our expenses, but that includes pension and health insurance and workers' compensation, which are not very inexpensive items. And transportation at that number, roughly 16%. Numbers are rounded on the graphical. Next. Now, we have to highlight a few things as to regard to the benefits. As the teachers' retirement system contribution actually, unfortunately, is going up from 8.8% to 9.53%. So that's an increase that is not welcomed by every school district in New York State, but that's what we have. As far as the contribution rate for the employment retirement system, that remains the same at 14.6%. We are in fact being helped in terms of the contribution. We're being helped because quite a few of our teachers, I mean, for next year, we have like about 18 retirements between teaching assistants and teachers. And that helps because the hiring teachers start at a lower salary, which in effect helps to mitigate the effect of increase on the contribution for the pension. Health insurance, we are budgeting for an increase of 5% for next year. The guidance is not quite clear. However, what happened this year that we experienced a surprise decrease in 1% could be more effect of a political decision on an election year rather than a significant change in the trend of the health insurance expenses. Next. Okay. So after putting all this together, we stand today with a gap in front of you with a gap of $998,362 as we are at this point. As we mentioned before, the state aid numbers will be final sometime on Tuesday, March 31st. And then at that moment, we will see if there is an addition, how much is that addition, and we'll make a decision to close this gap and have a final budget for the board.
So the contingency budget, this is the piece that none of us really like to talk about. But under a contingency budget, the district's tax levy for 2020-2021 must be the same or less than the tax levy for 2019-2020, a 0% increase. For our district, this means a decrease of $2,796,273 in tax levy revenues. So what is the contingency budget? A contingency budget funds only teachers' salaries. And those items the board determines to be ordinary contingency expenses. Ordinary contingent expenses have been defined under law to include legal obligations, expenditures specifically authorized by statute, and other items necessary to maintain the educational program, preserve property, and ensure the health and safety of the students and staff. We were under a contingency budget last year, and that is not the place that we want to experience again. So with that, that concludes the budget for 2020-2021, and it concludes the superintendent's report.
Can you guys hear me? No?
Yes.
I have a question, if possible. It's about the Chromebook. So those parents that don't have internet access, how do they how can they continue learning?
It is our endeavor to continue to survey and to meet the needs of those parents that currently are not equipped with technology. we are working very hard to continue to identify parents to make sure, or to put forth the effort to make sure that we do our due diligence to provide technology, at least one device in a home where there isn't. And that was the purpose of our survey, to hear from the community what experiences or what utilage they had in their homes.
So can parents still sign up, or is it something that passed?
Yes, we are in day 3 of distributing the Chromebooks, and we continue to reach out to our parents in a very methodical way.
So every parent can expect to hear from the district about.
Excuse me?
Every parent can expect to hear from the district within the next few days.
Can you say that again?
Every parent in the district can expect to hear from the district about the continuous learning.
Every parent in the district
can expect to hear from the school district about getting a Chromebook.
Well, we are reaching out to our parents. We don't have $1 million to give out, to loan rather, but we continue to work on the process.
Okay, that's it for me.
We started out with 1,500 and we available to distribute, and we think that's a lofty goal, but we still can go higher than that.
Thanks.
That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wortham. Moving on. We have consent agenda items 1 through 7. So do I have a motion for consent agenda items 1 through 7?
I'll move. Mr. Trigger.
Okay, and second by?
I will second.
Mark Berkowitz. Mark Berkowitz.
Second by Mr. Berkowitz. Ms. Kiwi, you'll do a roll call.
Mr. Berkowitz,
Aye.
Ms. Charles Pierre,
Aye.
Mr. Freilich, Mr. Freilich,
Aye.
thank you. Mr. Grossman,
Aye.
Mr. Trigger,
Aye.
Mr. E. Weissmandel,
Aye.
Mr. Y. Weissmandel.
Aye.
Thank you. Passes by 7 ayes.
Action items from the board. We just have the the notice of annual meeting. Do I have a motion for, I guess it's items 1 through 2 on action items from the board?
I will motion.
Please identify yourself when you,
E. Weissmandel.
and do I have a second?
I'll second.
If you can hear me.
Please identify yourself for the district clerk, please.
Joel Freilich.
Thank you. Ms. Kiwi, you'll do a roll call vote, please.
I will. Mr. Berkowitz,
Aye.
Ms. Charles Pierre,
Aye.
Mr. Freilich,
Aye.
Mr. Grossman,
Aye, 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 aye.
Mr. Trigger,
Aye.
Mr. E. Weissmandel,
Aye.
Mr. Y. Weissmandel.
Aye.
That passes with 7 ayes.
Action items from the superintendent. We have to accept donation for Action for Healthy Kids. items 1 to 2. Do I have a motion for action items from the superintendent as well as the addendum? Sorry, I forgot the addendum.
Thank you.
So it's 1 to 2 plus the addendum.
I'll
Move.
Joel.
Moved by Mr. Freilich, second by,
Second, Sabrina. Charles Pierre.
I think you're the only Sabrina, but okay. Well, roll call vote, Ms. Keeving.
Mr. Berkowitz,
Aye.
Ms. Charles Pierre,
Aye.
Mr. Freilich,
Aye.
Mr. Grossman,
Aye.
Mr. Trieger,
Aye.
Mr. E. Weissmandel,
Aye.
Mr. Y. Weissmandel.
Aye.
Thank you, and we passed with 7 ayes.
Thank you very much. Information and reports from the board. Needless to say, these are very trying times, and most important thing is for everybody to be safe and to take care of themselves and their families. As we said at the beginning of the meeting, we will continue to hold the meetings in this fashion until the governor determines that it's safe to return to the norm as specified in the open meetings law. If anybody has any suggestions on how we can do this better, please feel free to email the board. Kathy, can you share the email address?
They can email to the district clerk, which is kkivi@ercsd.org. And I will ensure that gets passed to the board.
Thank you very much. Future meeting dates. A regular meeting, although I don't know if anything about this is regular, is scheduled for next Tuesday, wherever you might find yourself with an internet connection, at 7:30 p.m. Written communications, there were no written communications received since the last board meeting. Executive session.
The only topic of business tonight to consider an executive session would be to review and consider the applications that were received for the vacant board position.
Okay. I'll make a motion to go to executive session to discuss those items. Do I have a second?
Second, Berkowitz.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Okay. Mr. Berkowitz,
Aye.
Ms. Charles Pierre,
Aye.
Mr. Freilich,
Aye.
Mr. Grossman,
Aye.
Mr. Trieger,
Aye.
Mr. E. Weissmandel,
Aye, aye.
Mr. Y. Weissmandel.
Aye, aye, aye.
Thank you. That motion passes with 7 ayes.
I don't envision any resolutions coming out of executive session. Would that be correct?
Mr. Gerhardt, after we review the applications, do you think there might be a motion coming out or?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. Then I'll say there might be, to be determined. I don't think executive session will be very long. It will be in a separate Zoom meeting than this one, after which we'll reconvene in this room, I understand. Is that correct, Ms. Keeving?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay. In that case, let's go to executive session.
Thank you.